I would like to thank the organizers for giving this opportunity. And so, can you change to the next slide? Yeah. I don't know. The slides are getting cut, so I'm not very sure in my screen. The scheme of presentation would be I would look at some of the prognostic markers, especially the reduced dosing of dasatinib and appropriate dosing of ponatinib in the relapse setting. Then look at a newer BCR-ABL inhibitor, the asciminib, and the new drug strategy, which is the PROTAC drug strategy. And then we would look something on the treatment-free remissions and some, and then molecular research, and then finally would take home message. Next slide, please. We know that the CML survival has improved over a period of time from 8% to 92% over the decades. Next slide. And we can see in this slide that the life expectancy of a chronic CML patient is almost approaching that of the general population. Take the age, whether elderly or younger, take the sex, whether it's males or females. Next slide. So these are select data from our country, and you can see that the 5-year EFS from different cities range between 72 to 75%, and the 5-year overall survival also is quite good, between 87 to 94%. Appears to be slightly lower. The reason for that being late presentation, the poor compliance, access to second generation TKI, and the lack of PCR monitoring. And this also has made things difficult for us to use the TFR strategy. Next slide. So the first take home message would be on looking at comorbidities, and it's very essential that while we are prescribing TKIs, it's important to manage the comorbidity well. So in this subgroup analysis study of CML4, it's clear that if somebody has a Charlson comorbidity index of more than 7, they fared very poor. So you can see that in the red line, and whether the age, after excluding the age, it was also seen still that the comorbidity index played an important role in the survival. Next slide. Now coming on to the scoring for many years. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So for many years we have been using the SOCAL score, and recently the Utah's long-term survival score was discussed, and this showed that this score described the survival better to risk group better in post TKI era. So can you click the next? So here you can see that in the slide you can see that the high risk group is better better described when compared to the low intermediate risk group, when as defined previously by the SOCAL. So I think in our day-to-day practice, ELTS score becomes quite important. Next. So coming on to the BCR-ABL kinase inhibitors, there have been a lot of generations of BCR-ABL inhibitors, and some of these newer inhibitors like the radotinib, which is only approved in South Korea, and then you have this newer drugs like the asciminib, which is a new kid on the block, and seems to be quite an interesting drug, and probably will change the treatment of patients with relapsed CML. Next slide. Next slide. So the long-term follow-up of this 50 mg daily dasatinib, after this paper which got published, I think there is a lot of discussion on this, and it's quite a welcome step, because we know how difficult it is to treat CML with dasatinib, especially at 100 mg, where the side effects are much higher. Next slide. Next. So you can see in this study where they looked at 81 patients. It was a single arm study, and they found that the cumulative rate of complete cytogenetic response at 6 months and 12 months were 77% and 95%. In fact, this was much better than the complete cytogenetic response seen in the Dazasian study. Next. So if you look at the, sorry, can you go back to the previous? So if you look at the toxicity, you can see that only 6% of the patients developed pleural effusion. So this suggests that 50 mg looks like a good, with respect to efficacy, it looks like a good dose strength, and the toxicity is much lesser. But we need to wait for a phase 3 non-inferiority study before we actually move on to using 50 mg in practice. Next. So this is what the 50 mg study looks like. 95% complete cytogenetic response with very good event-free survival. Next slide. So next area of discussion is how to optimize the dose of ponatinib. So ponatinib has been used in multiple failed patients prior to TKIs, and the dosing strengths have not been actually well defined, and the side effect toxicity with the cardiac has made it more difficult to use the drug. So here the investigators looked at using a dose of 45 mg or 30 mg or 15 mg. And in the 45 and the 30 mg, if patients achieved a major molecular response, then they reduced the dosing to 15 mg. Can you go to the next slide? And the primary endpoint was a complete cytogenetic response at 12 months. So can you go to the next slide? So if you look at the responses, you can see that the major molecular response overall in the 45 mg followed by 15 mg, and then in the 30 mg followed by 15 mg and the 15 mg, it seems that the 45 mg strategy seems to be more favorable. The percentage of patients achieving a complete cytogenetic response is much higher if you use a 45 mg, wait till major molecular remission, then reduce the dose to 15 mg. Next slide. So again, if you look at the T315 subgroup, it seems that the 45 mg followed by 15 mg is still doing very well. But also we should look at the 15 mg where you don't seem to have any major molecular remission with patients with T315I. So definitely a 15 mg strategy for a patients with T315I is going to fail. Next slide. Next slide. And the PFS and OS, though in all the three arms are similar, but it's too early to discuss on the PFS and OS. Next slide. This is a new target and a new drug, which is the asciminib. So this asciminib is otherwise called as the STAMP, which is specifically targeting the ABL myristoyl pocket. And how does it work? Can you go to the next slide? It has an interesting mechanism of action, and here you can see the in the active form and the inactive form. And if you see the see the active form, it has this myristoylated N terminal, which actually needs to go attach itself to the active domain of the kinase kinase site. And once it attaches to the kinase site, the active form disables and forms into an inactive form. Now what happens when you have a BCR-ABL translocation? Then there is a loss of this ABL1 autoinhibition, and hence the activity persists. So if the drug asciminib directly goes and binds to this particular site in the allosterically allosteric active site in the kinase domain, and this results in an inactive conformation of the BCR-ABL, thus preventing the activity, persistent BCR-ABL activity to happen. Next slide. So when this was studied in a phase 1 study, they found that the dose-limiting toxicity was asymptomatic elevations in the lipase levels with pancreatitis. Common side effects included fatigue, headache, arthralgia, hypertension, and thrombocytopenia. Next slide. So, looking at the responses of this drug, when compared to the ponatinib, which was used in the second, when 2 lines failure TKI in the PACE study, we can see that in patients who did not have a T315I mutation, the complete cytogenetic response was similar in between the studies. Next slide. If you look at the major molecular remission, also was almost similar in both the studies at 48% versus 56%. Next slide. So if you see in the T315I subset, you can see that the responses are much lower. So definitely ponatinib is still a better drug when compared to asciminib when it comes to T315I mutation. Next slide. Yeah, this is the same again with the major molecular remission, which is much lower in patients with T315I. Next slide. So what does that say? It says that asciminib is a good drug, at least for non-T315I, but maybe not so good for the T315I. Maybe we could combine asciminib with ponatinib, and this might result in better outcomes. So recently in August, there was a press release from Novartis saying that this drug has met the primary endpoint in a phase 3 study where they compared it with bosutinib. The further results and approvals are awaited. Next slide. So this is what I was saying, that in the cell line, it is seen that the asciminib with ponatinib definitely improved the sensitization of the BCR-ABL mutants. Next slide. So this is another interesting drug targeting strategy, and this strategy is called a PROTAC strategy, where you use proteolysis targeting chimera. So here you can see that this has a dual drug with a linker, and one part is the ligand of the E3 ligase, and the other one is the ligand for the protein of interest. So the E3 ligase is nothing but the enzyme for the ubiquitination. And then you have this protein of interest. Let's say our protein of interest is BCR-ABL. So when you give this particular drug with a linker, it goes and attaches to the E3 ligase, which actually splits the ubiquitin molecule. And this ubiquitin molecule binds to the protein of interest, let's say, which is BCR-ABL, and then it proteolyzes the protein and degrades it. So this seems to be a very interesting strategy. Next slide. And the drug, many drugs are being tried, and one of these drugs is the GMB475. So they have looked at this PROTAC binding to the myristoyl pocket to target the BCR-ABL1 protein degradation. These are the cell line data and looks promising. Next slide. Yeah. So with respect to TFR, I think we are stuck at 50%. Multiple studies consistently have shown that a TFR of patients up to 50% are possible. Next slide. So how do we improve beyond this 50%? So if you have 100 patients of CML, finally 40 patients achieve TFR and 60 patients fail TFR. Next slide. So one strategy for improving this TFR is looking at whether we could de-escalate the tyrosine kinase inhibitor therapy before discontinuation of therapy. So what they did is patients with major molecular remission or better, they reduced the dose of imatinib, dasatinib or nilotinib to 50% standard dose for 12 months. And after that, the TKI were discontinued after 12 months if no recurrence occurred. Next slide. So by using this strategy, they achieved almost 70% TFR. Next slide. Next is the prognostic index. So this is a study from Hammersmith where they looked at whether we could develop a TFR prognostic index. They looked at age, the previous TKI resistance, the duration, MR4 and transcript type. And go to the next slide. And they came out with a prognostic scoring which included 3 groups, and we could see that the curves separated well by using this scoring system. So you could actually identify which patient would better suit for a TFR strategy. Next slide. So the other area of TFR has been the late relapses. We know that majority of the patients who fail TFR are in the first 6 months. But so this study, which was an observational study, they looked at late relapses. So the late relapses, they defined as more than 2 years. And there were 9 out of 65 patients, which they defined as 14% of these patients could develop a late molecular relapse. Next slide. So they came out with 2 different modelings on how these patients relapse. The first model is patient stops the therapy. There is an exponential rise in the molecular transcripts, and then the patients fail. The second strategy, the second set of patients, when you stop the therapy, there is a staggering increase in the molecular transcripts, and over a period of time, over 2 years, these patients relapse. So they came out with the strategy that there are 2 different kinds of relapses which are seen in patients who undergo a TFR. Next slide.
Dr. Bishwajit, we are running out of time.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go to the last, I think. Can you go to the next slide?
You can take away, you can just press it on.
Yeah, you can go to the last slide. So that I can do the take home message. Can you go to the last slide? Okay. So my take home message will be that comorbidity management is very, very essential. We start using ELTS score, which is the preferred score now. 50 mg dasatinib looks very promising, exciting data, but we need to wait for phase 3 data. Ponatinib 45 mg till CCYR followed by 15 mg seems to be a better strategy. STAMP, which is specifically targeting the ABL myristoyl pocket, asciminib, seems to be a new kid on the block. Protect proteolysis targeting Chimera, which is a new drug targeting system. TKI de-escalation prior TFR might increase the number of patients who might go into a TFR. The CML stem cell targeting, one is by BCL2 inhibitor venetoclax, seems to be interesting, and that will be the final look at how we can cure CML. And then with CML and COVID-19 being there, we need to look at what are our patient outcomes in this time point. Thank you.